Now, fans of the heavy metal group Metallica, and that I'm sure includes many of you listening, oh, to be sure, those people have had to wait 5 years for the band's latest album, Death Magnetic, which was released finally last month. But in just those past 4 weeks, the CD has provoked a rather unexpected response. Nearly 16,000 fans have signed an online petition saying the album's too loud, and they're calling for it to be remixed or remastered. They say Death Magnetic is just a wall of sound, and one which has effectively buried the music. And some fans are even planning to send back their copies to Metallica's offices in protest. Our reporter Joel Moores has been asking why.
My name's Catherine, and I've been a Metallica fan for about 20 years.
My name's Scott, and I've been a Metallica fan since the late 80s, early 90s.
I bought the album online, and to begin with I thought that my headphones might be broken because it sounded very loud to begin with and a bit distorted and rather crackly. So I played the CD straight onto the computer and that sounded the same, and I played it on a CD player and that sounded the same, and I thought, this is weird, this just doesn't sound right. I wonder if the CD's faulty. So had a quick look on the Metallica forums, and it seemed like lots of the people had the same problem.
I think my experience was very similar, actually. I was a member of Mission Metallica, so they released a lot of early samples that I got to hear, and at first I thought they had actually broken them so that people, didn't pirate the early samples. But my brother had also bought the CD, and to my dismay found out it was exactly the same. So that's my introduction to Death Magnetic.
So how would you describe the sound quality on the CD?
It just seems distorted, and, well, it's very loud. And on certain notes and certain parts of the music, like when James hits high notes, you can't really tell what he's singing. You can't make the lyrics out very clearly, and a lot of the subtle nuances that are in some of the tunes, because there are some very complex tunes running through all these songs on the album, you just can't really hear them or make them out.
It very much sounds how you would expect if you thought your speakers were damaged or you were listening on the cheapest pair of little in-ear headphones you could get, and it is sometimes hard to distinguish what should be heard over the distortion.
Does it make it more difficult to enjoy the music?
I would say so. I mean, musically, I think it's the best album they've done in 20 years. And the first time I heard it, I was, frankly amazed. But there's something wrong with the sound. It just doesn't sound right to me.
What do you think is the possibility that it will be remastered?
I hope that it will be remastered, but I think realistically speaking, I have my doubts. And regardless of the amount of force behind those of us who are unhappy with it, significantly more are happy with it. So I feel we may be brushed aside as a annoyance.
Thank you. Disappointed Metallica fans there talking to Joel Moores. Well, earlier I discussed the so-called Loudness wars with Ian Shepherd, who's what's called a mastering engineer at an independent music production house. And that's not the same thing, he told me, as being a record producer.
A record producer I like to think of as a project manager. He collaborates with the band over months, maybe even years, recording and mixing the CD. At the end of that process, they have a collection of songs, and they bring it to the mastering house to have it made into an album. So we're looking at balancing the songs relative to each other, getting the tone of the songs right, roughly speaking bass and treble, but in much more detail than that, and just making a convincing artistic whole out of the songs.
Now, this so-called Loudness war, has it been going on for some time?
It has. I mean, it goes right back. I mean, the earliest examples, even a label like Motown were pushing the levels that were recorded onto vinyl as high as they possibly could back in those days, just to make their product try and stand out from everybody else. And now we're seeing it repeat with CD. The 80s saw the levels being quite conservative, but then something like the Red Hot Chili Peppers' Californication album about 10 years ago used to be a benchmark of a really loud CD, or a CD with a very high level, I should say.
And so I seem to remember Phil Spector having or inventing the wall of sound. So this is not something that's unique to heavy metal. I mean, pop's involved there, and folk and jazz.
Absolutely, yes. Unfortunately, that's true. I mean, heavy metal is supposed to be loud and supposed to be distorted, and a lot of pop music is supposed to be very loud. The paradox of this is that the loudness war is making things actually end up sounding quieter. CDs have a maximum level that you can push things to, And if you try and push the music up against that brick wall, you just squash it, you just crush it. So the quiet bits become loud, the loud bits become quiet. There's no contrast, there's no light and shade.
You take all the features out of it.
You take a lot of what's interesting about the music away, yeah.
I should say that in a moment we'll play examples of this so people can hear what we're talking about. It just occurred to me when I first heard of the problem, well, if it's too loud, you just turn the volume down, but you're not. You say it's not just about the sound level, it's about the features.
That's right. The level on the CD is being pushed so hard that the actual musical signal on the CD is distorted and crushed. Turning the volume down just gives you a quieter, distorted, crushed sound. Whereas a CD with more conservative levels, you can turn it up and it will leap out at you. The solos will grab you, the choruses will lift, and it will just sound better.
Now, we're asking for your personal views this morning. You don't represent, as it were, the views of the production house you work for, but what's your personal interest in Death Magnetic?
Well, I've got a professional opinion about it, and I've got a personal opinion. Professionally speaking, if the band were made aware of the pros and cons of what they were doing when they made the record and they decided to go with it, that's their decision, and they're within their rights to do that. But looking at it from a technical standpoint, it's about half, again, as loud as any other Metallica CD and most other heavy rock CDs that are out there. It's much more distorted than you would normally expect. I mean, the sound has distorted guitars and things in it, and people use distortion as an effect, but this whole CD is covered in distortion. And it's also digitally clipped. If you look at the waveform in a computer, you can see that the tops of the waveforms have just been sliced off. And that actually means you literally lose information. Bass notes can't be made out. Like you heard the fans saying at the start, you can't pick out the musical details because it's just gone.
So there are two versions of the album being distributed. One's the official CD, and the other is a set of downloadable files. Why are they different?
The files are part of a computer game called Guitar Hero for the PlayStation console. And the idea of the game is you pretend to play a guitar along with the track, and if you get it right, the guitar solo sounds right, and you score more points. So it has the